us about your new recruiting program, Empower.
Oh yeah, I can. So Empower is, I'm just so excited about this program. And this is one of the things that we did spotlight in our report. And it's one of several things that we're doing. I was saying earlier, to do different, you want to, to get different outcomes, you want to do different and try different things. And so this is the first year, this meaning, what year is it? 2021. This is the first year for the Empower program. It's in that spirit of business is unusual. And we're really trying to think about pipeline and reaching students earlier in their education, introducing them to the accounting industry. And so we created this new internship Empower program. It targets freshmen who are interested in pursuing a career in professional services, particularly those who have self-identified as members of underrepresented populations within, who are interested in the industry. They'll have the opportunity to sharpen their professional development and leadership skills, participate in mentorship activities, engage with business resource groups, and then just become an overall part of the Grant Thornton community. And one of the reasons this is important, Liz, amongst several other reasons, is that a lot of the times we hear things that come up from an unconscious bias standpoint. Certain students or certain candidates, maybe they're not polished enough, or they haven't had as much exposure, or there's all these little nuances. And part of that comes from exposure. Part of that comes from being able to understand and sort of fully embrace and have the benefit of knowing and engaging with an environment. And so we want to provide a lot of those unspoken rules, a lot of that just insight and intel, that when you get the inclusion piece right on the front end and you communicate and make a path for people to sort of see themselves in an environment where they can thrive, we know that we already are talking about smart and resilient and problem solving and innovative and creative thinkers. We just have to create the path for them. And the Empower program does just that.
I love that. And I love how you're looking, again, it seems like you're taking a very holistic approach to, traditional issues that have come up and thinking a little bit differently about these.
Yep.
Can you share about how Grant Thornton is navigating the additional impacts on underrepresented communities inside the firm as a result of COVID-19?
Yeah, again, another interesting one. I don't think any of us could have imagined that we'd still be working from home and facing a pandemic over a year later. When the pandemic first hit, Grant Thornton was one of the first accounting firms, one of the first firms in professional services in general, to actually move to a fully remote work environment. And then we quickly realized the challenges this would create. We had, working parents. We had individuals who did not have kids, where we're alone and face, feelings of isolation. We have individuals with diverse abilities that, beyond maybe being alone or even being with families, there were just certain challenges with the setup of their workspace. And there's so many other factors, which I'm sure everybody's familiar with, so I don't have to belabor those. But we really leaned into this. And one of the things that we stood up last year with our national leadership team, DEI task force, in which I co-lead, is we open the door for all of our business resource groups to come in and really talk firsthand about those challenges. So yes, we know that DEI is most effective when it's from the top down, but in this particular instance, we had to do what I like to call sort of keep our ear to the streets and really understand and listen for that understanding about what are the issues that are starting to prevail and persist. And so one by one, our business resource groups have presented to our NLT, and this is a process that is ongoing. So we're still having these presentations. And for example, the Working Parents BRG came and they said, I don't know if you all realize, well, not me, because I was realizing the same thing they were realizing, is that there is a whole backdrop. There's a whole thing happening behind the scenes, in that people are homeschooling, or, they have new babies that are at home that aren't even able to go to daycare and things like that. And so we did some things like increased our backup care, doubling the amount of days that was initially offered and providing new days, recognizing that it was still a pandemic, having the opportunity for a close family member like a parent or an aunt or a neighbor to be able to come and have reimbursement for that backup care while our working parents were still able to work. We had a free tutoring benefit that was offered. We had a free meal benefit that was offered through Grubhub, where it was available to all U.S. employees. We also stood up like a meal planning and prep benefit, a senior care benefit for those who were caring for aging parents. And maybe I'm not a working parent, maybe I am a teammate that is caring for my parents, and this pandemic has really put, has really hindered my ability to be able to do that. And so more importantly, like I can name some things tactically that came as a result of that we did. But I would say the areas of psychological safety and the areas of being able to have some agility with our offerings, our benefits, work from home stipend, those sorts of things. Most of those ideas, though, came from our people throughout the firm, and they came based on needs that were articulated for the timing. And quite frankly, they haven't stopped. We're still having these conversations, and we're still standing up moments of appreciation. We've been implementing appreciation days. So again, I won't like get tactical and just kind of throw out all the things we've done as much as how we've done it and why we've done it.
Yeah. Again, what I'm hearing is, this approach of creating the space and the psychological safety where people feel that they can actually speak about their issues and sharing them. And then the idea that you're actually listening, that your team is actually hearing and understanding and able to empathize with other issues that they might not be their own, but recognizing and then acting on them. That's important.
One other thing I'll add that I think was so telling and powerful during this time on that mental well-being piece, right? Just the mental and emotional well-being, first with how to cope with, during uncertain times, right? How to manage stress during uncertain times is sort of where we started. And then as we got through, the mental well-being piece has evolved. We have a provider outside of our EAP that we already had in our system, Happify Health, and they really have been phenomenal in partnering with us. So even when we're having our firm-wide all hands calls or things like that, we have sort of a mindful moment where we're stopping and we're building in the time for mental well-being. The part that I love the most about a lot of this is that our leaders have come with stories of just what they're dealing with in the backdrop. And they have really empowered and sort of opened up and started to like destigmatize all of these different scenarios. And I think people have felt encouraged and supported for the most part as a result of that.
It's wonderful. It's excellent to hear. And when you're looking at the data overall in your transparency report, what do you find to be the most encouraging?
That's a good one. That is a good one. I first find it encouraging that I am looking at the data in our overall transparency report, and that others around me, whether it's my internal colleagues or my external colleagues, are also able to look at the same data. Because it's out there and we're able to talk about it and solution for it. I think when I look at the numbers, there's room across the board, and I hesitate to call out too much positivity on any given front. I think that the efforts that we have had against women over the past 2 decades obviously is maybe where some of our stronger numbers play, for lack of a better term. I think while we have room to do even more around diverse hiring, the future at least does show some promise for African Americans, Hispanics, those members of the Pan-Asian community. There's a higher hiring rate than our current employee demographic. So I think that's an encouraging trend. But going back to what we said earlier, retention is really the key to success. So if we hire more diverse talent and, again, they don't feel like they're a part of Grant Thornton, then that doesn't really help. So I think it's that balance of, it's promising that we are seeing higher hiring rates and that we're looking to additional places to continue to even increase that. So, and it's also really encouraging to me to see the level of support across demographics and the intersectionality and some of those points that we'll be able to highlight more in the future. But yeah, I think the most encouraging thing for me is that we're pushing forward on it. And like I said, you're able to talk to me about the numbers in the transparency report because they're out there.
Yeah, I have to say, just, we've been working together, what, a year plus, year and a half now.
Yep.
And I feel like conversations that we've been having are getting so much more exact and or detailed in the numbers, and our planning efforts are increasing. And I just, having leaders like you at the forefront of this issue that are empowered to act on behalf of your firm, I just see the work that we're doing is so important, and that we are truly going to be able to make a difference. I'm very encouraged.
Great.
So what advice would you give to other firm leaders that are considering sharing their demographic data and DEI plans?
Well, first off, I want to close out on the point that you were making about the work we've been able to do for the last, I actually don't want to let that moment pass. And I want to just throw those same regards back to you, Liz, and just say that the work that we've done with CAQ in particular, I think has jumped leaps and bounds. And you're right, we are getting more exact, and I am encouraged by where I know that we're going. And I feel like, we'll be thoughtful about how we get there, but we also will push the envelope to do business as unusual collectively together across the firm. So I didn't want to miss an opportunity for that. In terms of giving advice, which I always hesitate to give advice as I'm also in the process, Grant Thornton is also in the process of learning as well. One thing I would say is, I mentioned earlier about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and sometimes the tendency to sort of lump them together. And I would say for us and for anyone, who's thinking about sharing transparency, really look at those things and how they work in concert, with one another. I think the equity piece is a key anchor for attracting and retaining diversity and for creating an inclusive environment for which that diverse talent can thrive. It is really the leveling of the playing field, and that is where a lot of the hard discussions and, quite frankly, where I think the rubber meets the road. So I would first say that. And, I think as accountants and auditors, the industry in general, we're always sort of striving for perfection. And the reality of it is no firm is perfect when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. But by being transparent, it really helps us to push the entire industry forward. And so I say, as much as we're all being progressive and thoughtful and really have to do so, don't let that ultimate, strive for perfection hinder getting started. Pull the Band-Aid off and go for it, and allow yourself the agility. And that's where the transparency comes into place. Allow yourself the agility and the transparency over time to say, we learned something better and we learned something different. And it's not about what if I miss the goal? It is about what if you don't have a goal and you miss the mark? So I guess those would be my words of encouragement. It's just get started, understand, that equity is really a great anchoring place for diversity and for inclusion, and be confident to even look outside of our industry at what some of the best practices are. Find some trusted colleagues, to really understand how they're measuring and strategies that they're taking, and then just go for it.
Yeah. Well, Rashada, thank you so much for this. I love how you're going for it, and Grant Thornton is going for it. And it's, I'm just really, really excited for what's to come.
Same.
For the firm and the profession. So thank you.
Thank you, Liz. I appreciate this time today.